Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams, quarterback, Southern California.
What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back to the Willis Twin Towers podcast here on the Barroom Network. I am one of your hosts, Jeff Willis. To my right is my co-host, Tim Willis, and I'll pass it over to him in just a second. But I wanted to remind you guys, as always, to please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can find us here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. We're live every Friday night. Our executive producer is Aldo Gandia, at the Barroom Network. And you can also find me at _Jeff Willis. You can find Tim at Tim Willis 24. And we got a big show for you tonight, guys. Big win this past weekend over LA Rams. We got a big showdown coming up against the Panthers, whom you could make the argument were absolutely fleeced by a Ryan Poles trade that netted us Caleb Williams. So, and now also Tim's got a little tribute he wants to pay to a guy that you guys are all familiar with, who just recently passed away. And I won't divulge into that at all. I'll let Tim get into it. So let me pass it over to Tim and let him share his tribute to one of his favorite players.
Yeah, guys, obviously we're going to talk Bears tonight. We're not going to take away from that. But I do want to get into this a little bit because, and this isn't just because I'm a Reds fan. Let's talk about Pete Rose a little bit. Now, if you guys don't know, Pete Rose passed away, I believe it was Wednesday. Early afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, if I'm not mistaken, is when the time frame was. But Pete was maybe the most influential figure in all of sports during his playing time. Widely considered by many to be possibly even the greatest hitter of all time. And it's hard to argue when you are the all-time hit king with 4,256 hits. I don't know if we've only seen two players ever hit 4,000. And one of the other one was Ty Cobb, and that record was his at 4,191, which was believed to be unbreakable until Pete Rose did break that record in one of his final two seasons playing Major League Baseball. Now, like I said, guys, this is a Bears podcast, and I don't want to take too incredibly long on this, but I do want to talk about Pete Rose for a couple of different reasons. Number one, what I just mentioned a minute ago, widely regarded by many as the greatest hitter of all time, and certainly one of the greatest players of all time. He's the only player in the history of baseball to be selected to the All-Star game at 5 different positions, 17 All-Star games. Like I said, 4,256 hits, which is a major league record. And in a second here, I'm going to get into his stats. But, for Major League Baseball to keep this man out of the Hall of Fame based on what he did with gambling is just a travesty to me. I understand what the rule was at the time and still is that there's no gambling on baseball when you're involved in the sport. But today we have LeBron James on a DraftKings commercial promoting gambling. So it's okay to do that, but we can't forgive what Pete Rose did 35 years ago. So if you guys don't know this, he was banned from baseball after the 1990 season or during the 1990 season. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong in there. It's somewhere during that 1990 season. He was the manager of the Reds, 1989, not 1990. They won it in 1990 with Lou Piniella. But Pete Rose was the manager before that, and most people believe that that's why the Reds team in 1990 won the World Series, because that was a team that Pete Rose had built. But he was banned from the game of baseball because he was found to be guilty of betting on baseball. And if you guys haven't read the book, I have it right here. It's called My Prison Without Bars. It's an autobiography. It's an incredible read if you haven't read this book. And he talks about how he always bet on the Reds to win when he was managing. He never bet on anything but for them to win because he believed in his team. And, people that want to say, well, we don't know. He could have been betting on his team to lose. He could have been betting to throw games and blah, blah, blah. Pete Rose did nothing but win in his Major League Baseball career. He's a 3-time World Series champion. I'm going to go into his stats really quick, guys. And then you guys, and obviously, Jeff, why don't you can all jump in here and tell me your thoughts on this. But just to go over his stats really quickly here. Like I said, Major League records. The first one, obviously, is the hits at 4,256, which, in my opinion, will never be touched, especially in today's day and age where batting average is a joke. No, there's like 3 guys in all of baseball who have a plus 300 average, which is insane. At-bats at 14,053, plate appearances at 15,891, singles at 3,215. Many Hall of Famers don't even have 3,000 hits, let alone singles. And games played at 3,562. Those are his Major League records. He's a 17-time All-Star at 5 different positions, like I explained to you guys earlier. 2-time Gold Glove winner, a Silver Slugger, a National League MVP, 3-time World Series champion, twice with the Reds and once with the Phillies, a World Series MVP, I believe it was 60. I'm not even going to remember because I believe it's 63, but I could be wrong. Rookie of the Year, a 303 lifetime average, which is insane as well to hit 300 lifetime. I believe it was 307 left-handed and 298 right-handed. A 79.5 career WAR. That's wins above replacement if you don't know. Insane numbers. And only 1,143 strikeouts in over 15,000 plate appearances. Imagine that today with all the strikeouts that we have now. Guys are striking out some guys close to 300 times a year. He did it 1,100 times in 20 years. He's widely regarded as the greatest hitter the game has ever seen. Like I said before, he was a switch hitter. He hit 307 lefty and 298 righty, which is very rare for a switch hitter to be dominant from both sides of the plate, not just one. So, Jeff, before I go over to you, and I do want your opinion on this, listening to just the numbers and just the stats, no question he's a Hall of Famer. Matter of fact, he should be a unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer. The one thing I will say is, of course, people will question, he went against the integrity of baseball. Absolutely, he did at the time. No doubt about it. But we live in a world of second chances. And for one of the greatest, maybe if not the greatest hitter or player the game has ever seen, nicknamed Charlie Hustle because of how he played the game, a guy who gave everything that he had into his playing career, belongs in the Hall of Fame. Regardless of what his past is, and this is damning on Major League Baseball because they waited, and I think this is intentional. They waited until he died, and now I believe he's going to make the Hall of Fame. And that is awful and is an absolute travesty that Major League Baseball would do that just because they don't like him. In my opinion, that is what it is, and that's where it's going. So, Jeff, in your opinion, do you think that Pete should have been given that second chance before he passed and been allowed to be enshrined into the Hall of Fame? Or is it just me?
Well, I mean, I kind of struggle with this whole thing because, first of all, before I tell you my exact thoughts on it, and I'll try to keep this relatively short so we can get into our Bears talk, but Cliff made an excellent point here in the chat a little bit ago about how professional sports teams are very hypocritical about their gambling and how teams make a lot of money from gambling in general. Really, the leagues all make a ton of money on gambling, mostly from the advertisement for it in the partnerships that they have with the gambling companies. So, look, I agree with you, Cliff. There is definitely some hypocrisy involved there. That being said, all these leagues are still very strict about even today with players who are gambling within their own sports. Okay, so who was it that just got the big suspension like 2 years ago? Was it Calvin Ridley, I believe? got hit with a big suspension for gambling the whole year in football. So it's, whether or not they're gambling on their own teams or not, they're not supposed to be gambling, especially in regards to their own sports, their own leagues that they play in. So I kind of understand why the punishment existed the way it did. Okay. Why they were punishing him the way they did. Now, look, again, like you said, the numbers speak for themselves. The guy is obviously Hall of Fame worthy. He was that good of a player. That's the thing about baseball, though. And this is how baseball has kind of always been. Okay. But they are very serious about their integrity of their game. And it's even more so, in my opinion, than it is with the other sports. Baseball has had an issue with this since really 1919 with the Chicago White Sox, when that team was banned from baseball for throwing the World Series. And it couldn't even prove that everybody on the team had anything to do with that, just that they knew about it. So, in my opinion, when you look at just those two situations in and of themselves, you can kind of see why Rose still has not gotten into the Hall of Fame. If you're not going to let that 1919 White Sox team, any of those players, make the Hall of Fame, like Shoeless Joe Jackson, after decades after they've already been dead, it makes you question whether Rose is going to get in too. I think he's deserving of it. I think he does deserve a second chance. But again, it's like, you're looking at it from the perspective of baseball, the Major League Baseball, and how they've operated in the past. Do you really think they're going to let a guy who, violated the integrity of their sport by gambling on his own team that he was managing? It's hard to say. I just don't know if I see it. I think he deserves it. Yeah. And I would give him the second chance if it was up to me. I think you're talking about one of the greatest players that's ever lived. Of course he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But again, it's like, do I really think baseball is going to lift their ban from him if they're not going to lift the ban from the 1919 Chicago White Sox? I don't see it. I just don't see that being the case. I hope I'm wrong, because he does deserve to get in. And really, the same thing should be said for that team in 1919. But again, guys, I just don't know. We'd love to know what you guys think. So in the chat, let us know in the chat what you guys think. If you think he both deserves to get in, and if you think Major League Baseball will lift that ban. But I do, the way I'm looking at it right now, they let this guy go his whole life without getting him in. And I don't know if that's, just punishment to the man. Like, look, you're not getting in. We want you to live your whole life without seeing yourself have this opportunity. I don't know that they would be so. I don't know that it would be like that. I really think it's just a matter of, I'm not sure he's ever going to get in. I think they've just look at it like this guy, with what he did. I don't know if we can ever let him in, just based on the fact that, again, the integrity of the game. It's almost like he's a poster child's not the good word. He's an example for for anybody else who would think about doing something like that. And again, it's still going on in today's day and age. You still see guys who, when they gamble, they're being suspended for, your entire year or however long, so it's tough. It's really tough. And Bruja makes a good point here too. Banning him from the Hall of Fame is extreme, with integrities and standards getting tossed when they encourage guys like McGwire, Sosa, Bonds, to be using performance enhancing drugs and steroids to promote the sport. That, yeah, it's on record that these guys back in the 90s, there was a lot of juicers. And many of those guys will probably end up in the Hall of Fame still. Mark McGwire, I believe, did already make it.
Well, here's the other problem with that too. The Hall of Fame, Cooperstown, and Major League Baseball are two separate entities. Pete Rose is not banned from the Hall of Fame. He's banned from Major League Baseball. However, the Hall of Fame committee doesn't allow players who are banned from Major League Baseball into the Hall of Fame. So he's not actually banned from the Hall of Fame. Major League Baseball would have to approve that, and they can approve for him to be inducted. Now, after that, he would have to be voted in and yada, 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 which is another story. And again, like you're talking about the steroid era and things like that, I'm telling you, if there's one player who's been linked to steroids at all, if they get in the Hall of Fame, it will open the floodgates for people like Pete Rose and those White Sox teams. Now, I want to talk about your 1919 White Sox for a minute, because I believe that is another part of baseball where it's just such an old man's league. Like, this is what we run into. We see this all the time. They bring in this judge and this judge, and they let him be the executioner, basically, of the 1919 White Sox. If you guys haven't seen the movie 8 Men Out, I'm not a White Sox fan, but it's an excellent movie.
Excellent movie.
It's a very excellent movie. And they bring in this judge, like I'm saying, Comiskey and some of the other owners, they hire this judge. This judge takes over as commissioner of baseball, which they hadn't had before that. And basically, they give him autonomous power, and he says, okay, you guys are banned for life. One man makes that decision. And it's very similar with the Pete Rose situation. There was a commissioner, forgive me, I don't know the names, but the commissioner of baseball at the time that banned Pete Rose died shortly after he banned him. And I'm not even sure it was supposed to be a permanent ban. It was just while they figured out the whole situation in case. And then they bring in actually, I don't believe he'd been banned yet by that original commissioner. Regardless, they bring in a interim commissioner who then places the ban or makes the ban for life or whatever. And now, since then, nobody's been willing to overturn this banning. And they've had opportunities. Pete Rose has written many, many, many letters over the years trying to get reinstated. And although actually, if you can, he's got a clip or an image here, a graphic of Pete Rose's letter to Rob Manfred. I'm going to just read you the bottom line. Basically, guys, this letter is just asking for forgiveness and how he is asking to be in the Hall of Fame and to be reconsidered for. This was 2 years ago. I want to read you guys the final paragraph here because I think it's incredibly important. He says, I am asking for forgiveness despite my many mistakes. I am so proud of what I accomplished as a baseball player. I am the hit king, and it is my dream to be considered for the Hall of Fame. Like all of us, I believe in accountability. I am 81 years old and know that I have been held accountable and that I hold myself accountable. I write now to ask you for another chance. I love that he put that about accountability and how he's been held accountable. This was 2 years ago, so we're talking 32, 33 years to the point of this letter that he'd been held accountable. And that's what he was saying. Like, at what point, how much longer are you going to make me wait? I have dealt with this for 30 something odd years. I'm close to death. I'm 81 years old. And it's like the letters, just because of the name on the letter, they didn't care. And nothing was ever done. So I think it's, like I said before, I think it's a travesty. I don't want to talk too much on it, guys, but it's just, and Cliff, I want to actually make that point really quick. Cliff asked, do you guys think Pete Rose had been reinstated if he admitted to the gambling immediately? I do believe you're right, Cliff. I think they would have. And I think that was the biggest part of it. I do, because I think the biggest part of the whole thing was that he lied about it for a long time. And then all of a sudden the proof is in the pudding and he admits it. And so I believe their thought was, well, he would have taken this to the grave and he would have lied about it forever. And I think that, and he knew it was because it would have kept him out of the Hall of Fame probably. But I do think the way it all went down and how long he was kept out of baseball, I do think that would have been different had he admitted up front, yes.
See, I don't think, and I'll just make this quick so we can move right into our Bears talk for the night. So, Cliff, I don't think he would have gotten in. I don't think he would have been reinstated if he'd admitted it right away. Just because, like we said before, it's just that's baseball. I just feel like they have this. They like to set an example with these players that they feel like have messed with the integrity of their game, and I just feel like even if he would have admitted it right away, it wouldn't have made a difference. Now, looking at it, the fact that he did admit it, I kind of look at that as like an excuse for Major League Baseball. Like, well, he never admitted to it, so we're not going to let him in. He tried to lie about it. Well, even if he didn't do that, I'm not sure it would have made a difference. I just kind of think that's Major League Baseball's excuse, or one of their excuses for keeping him out of it. So I don't. Again, like I said before, I just think that's an issue with Major League Baseball and them, wanting to use these guys as an example that nobody's bigger than the game. And so I don't like it necessarily. I can kind of see where they're coming from. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't think it would have made a difference for Rose. And I don't think it would have made a difference for the White Sox in 1919 either, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they had court cases over that, overthrowing that series in 1919, and nobody ever was convicted of anything. Shoeless Joe hit like 400 in that series and didn't commit an error. It's like, when you see things like that happening and these guys are still getting blackballed for the rest of their careers, to me, again, it's just Major League Baseball setting an example. So that's just my thoughts on it. And, I'm glad we had an opportunity to spend a little bit of time on that because it is an important sports issue. And as Cliff says, a lot of owners are old people. Old people get set in their ways and many believe they're always right. I 100% agree with that. It's a very traditionalist mindset. And a lot of older people, they grow up seeing things in a certain way and see how things are done in a certain way. And they tend to not enjoy, they don't like change. They like to see things continue the way they are. And they're very stubborn, like you said. So I agree with that. I think that has a big part of it. So that's unfortunate. I wish things would be different. But if, again, like I said before, I don't think he's ever going to get in. I don't think it really matters, even if he is gone now. I just think that that's how baseball is. So moving on, let's kind of just take a few minutes here real quick, Tim, to go over the past game that the Bears had against the Rams, and then we'll move on to the game against Carolina. So the one thing I want to say real quick about this past game was I felt like this was against the Rams. This was the best game the Bears have played as a unit, as a in all three phases all season long. We got great contributions from the defense. We got great contributions from the special teams, which, by the way, Torrey Taylor, you guys have heard us talk about this before, this dude is a boss. He's going to be an absolute freaking weapon for this team for the rest of his career if it continues on the way it is right now. I mean, he did the two massive punts at the end of that game that dropped them both inside the 10-yard line and forced the Rams to have to drive the entire length of the field, which they couldn't do at the end, obviously, and they lost the game. Matthew Stafford threw that interception to Jaquan Brisker. So I feel like, and Aldo has on the screen here, the score was 24-18 Bears. So like I said, I feel like it was the best they've shown in all three phases. The offense had times where they looked pretty decent. The first half was rough, as it has been in every game so far. But in the second half, they really started to get it together a little bit more. Caleb is making some good throws. I mean, he's still missing some that you don't want to see him miss. Absolutely. I can't deny that. He's missing some throws. But he's also making some throws that are very impressive. Some tight window throws even. That throw that he had to commit when he was crossing behind the linebacker was a throw with anticipation. He had to get it out quickly, but he put it where only Kmet could get it. It was just over the outstretched hand of the linebacker, and it was a dart. It was a perfect throw. And you love to see stuff like that because, number one, he's got conviction in his arm talent. And number two, he's getting rid of the ball quickly. And even number three, you're picking up a first down doing that. You're making big plays with this. You're keeping the chains moving. So I like I said, I think that there were a lot of positives from the offense. There were certainly some areas where they need to improve. The run game looked much better than it has all season long. DeAndre Swift looked much better than he has all season long. One thing that was surprising to me, and we've been talking to you guys about this for a few weeks now, Khalil Herbert is still not getting involved at all. He had 0 snaps in this game. 0 snaps, which I could not believe that. I mean, Roschon obviously got more work, which we kind of anticipated that happening, and he looked very good. As I told you guys last week, I think Roschon looks better this year than he has at any point so far in his career. And I don't know if injuries have had anything to do with that or if he's just improved that much throughout the offseason, but he looks very, very good. And I think
see this sitting those first two games may have had something to do with that too.
What's that?
I would say sitting those first two games probably had something to do with that too. Not getting any.
As far as healing, yeah, I would think that.
Saying I think that might have lit a fire in his rear end.
Could have. It very well could have. I mean, he's seeing how the team is playing offensively. It's like, well, I want to get out there and make a difference. I could see that, and he's also getting a chance to watch and see how things are working and not working. So maybe that gave him an opportunity to kind of study it and think about how he could implement his game in a way that would be successful. And obviously it's working so far. I absolutely loved that play call at the goal line. You guys heard me bitching all last week about that stupid speed option that they ran on 4th and goal from the 1-yard line last week that they just, I just cannot for the life of me understand why you would do something like that. And then this week they come out bigs everywhere. They ran it is basically it was 23 personnel. Okay, but because there's 3 tight ends on the field and 2 running backs. But really, the fullback that was in there was another offensive lineman and Doug Kramer. So in essence, you're running out of 13 with an extra big in there. So I really liked the way they did that. And I love getting Kramer in there to make a block. And for one, you're getting a young guy in there and for his first experience in a real NFL game. For two, you're not getting fancy. You're just saying, look, we're obviously about to run the ball here. We got all these big bodies in here. Try to stop us. And guess what? They couldn't stop them. Even as poor as the Bears offensive line has played this year, they could not stop that play. And it's like we've been talking about. Sometimes you have to just understand it's not all about out scheming everybody. Sometimes you just got to go out there and do what you got to do. Put your guys out there and let them go to work. Let them.
How many times did we say that last year with Luke Getsy? How many times did we say this in those close yardage situations and we tried to get too cute? We did the same thing with Nagy. Instead of just getting an I formation or which everybody talks about the I formation, or just getting behind center and running the freaking football down their throats. Get blockers and run the ball with your big heart, your tough carry running backs. Your David Montgomery's a few years ago. Your Roshan Johnson's now. I would even trust Khalil Herbert in some of those situations if you've got it schemed up properly. Or just get a tush push and let your quarterback get you a couple yards. It's one of those things, we've said this I don't know how many times. You don't have to get super fancy all the time. Sometimes you just got to let your big guys go to work. That's what you're paying for. That's what the offensive line is there for. If your offensive line can't get push on a defensive line, you've got serious problems. They should always get push. Sorry for cutting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see to me, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to pick up a yard. I understand the situation, and they're on the goal line. The defense is obviously going to do everything they can to prevent that. But again, it's like you got all these big bodies in here. You got a running back who's shown he is more than capable of getting tough yards. Why would you not at least try it? The thing that I liked about it most is they didn't wait till fourth down to go ahead and just run power there, as somebody mentioned in the chat earlier. God's play, as Matt Eberflus alluded to in his press conference, that power is what they call God's play. So I like how they did it right away on first down. They didn't wait. They just went out there, they brought out their package, and they ran it. And guess what? They scored on the very first play they did it. And then they did it again later in the game in a situation where they needed a yard. And I believe that was on fourth down. So they had to get a yard. They brought in their big package there. And again, they converted again. So it's like I said, why are we doing this stupid fancy bullshit when now that we see for sure that we can do it? We can do it with the power. We can do it without getting fancy. And really, it shouldn't have had to take them doing it and seeing it to know that they could make it work and not having to get so cute with it. Obviously speed option. Even if you're trying to get cute, speed option on 4th and 1 from the goal line. I don't understand that. And again, I don't want to harp on that like I did so many times last week, but this is what I like to see. They're doing something that's not, it doesn't have to be so, again, you don't always have to out scheme everybody. Just put your guys out there and let them do the jobs. And they did. They did it well. So I did like that. And again, I like how they really started to get the run game going out. There was a lot of, I feel like they schemed it up a little bit differently than they have the first few weeks. And again, DeAndre Swift looked very good this week. He made some good cuts. His vision looked better than it has in the past few weeks. His burst is always good. But what I really liked about it is that he showed patience this week, more so than he has in the past few weeks. And he found holes. He had a huge run for a touchdown up the middle. He had a nice screen pass that reminded us of that one in the preseason. Another kind of like little Caleb dump off sidearm throw, which I don't know how he got this ball off either, but it was a great throw and a great play. So I just, like I said, guys, I'm one of those advocates of not necessarily getting too, and I just kind of said this, but I not getting too fancy and just kind of doing what showing it and doing it, because if you can't do that, then maybe you get a little bit fancy. At least try to do it first, because like I told you guys last week, let's say you run power. Let's say they did what they did this week, right? And you've got Doug Kramer in the backfield and you run that power play from the 1 yard line and you don't score. Okay. Let's say it's 4th down and you don't score. I can live with that. I can't live with that speed option shit where you lose 12 yards. I can't live with that. It doesn't work for me. So I don't mind it at all. I really, really liked the play call, and I like how we're starting to see. I feel like Shane Waldron is showing that he's willing to make adjustments, and his pride is not too big, which I feel like was an issue with Getsy. I felt like he had a little bit of a pride issue, which is like, I like to do things this way, and we're going to continue to do things this way. He never really said that, but he showed it with his decision-making. So I like how we're seeing with Waldron. And look, you're going to get people who say, well, he shouldn't have to have the players telling him to hold him accountable. I tend to agree with you on that, with those people who say that. However, that being said, it's like he's a first-year coordinator with a new team who's got established players on the offense already. Obviously, Caleb isn't one of them, but there are established players on this offense, older veteran players on this offense like Lewis and Keenan Allen. Maybe he's just a little apprehensive to come at those guys at first. But when Mercedes Lewis comes up to you and says, look, we want to be coached hard, I feel like it opened a door a little bit for him. And again, I understand those who say that he shouldn't have to have that happen, but it did, and it made a difference in the first game we saw.
This isn't Pee Wee football. This isn't Pop Warner. These are all grown men. And so, and you got to remember, like, Shane Waldron's probably barely older than Mercedes Lewis. They're probably around the same age. So it's kind of hard. I get it. It is his job to hold them accountable. But at the same time, it sounds like he's a believer of, I shouldn't have to hold you accountable kind of thing. He didn't mind doing it, but he also did make that mention in his press conference that basically that there is a fine line there. Like, I have no problem doing that, and I will do that. But the players also have to hold up their end of the bargain too. Like, they have to be willing to be coached hard. So, and they have to, once I do coach them hard, they have to be able to take that criticism and run with it. So that is definitely a big part of it. But I liked what he did. And I've always been a believer that when you're in close yardage situations, it's power game. You use your speed when you are in the open field. I've always been a believer of that. Speed in the open field, power in the short yardage situation. And I don't think you always have to try to get fancy. And we've seen it so many times in the league. And the teams that typically have success are the ones that don't try to get too cute and just they just power it in there. They let the big guys go get it done for them. And if your big guys can't get it done, then your big guys aren't they're not going to last very long. They're not going to be there much longer because they're not getting the job done. So it kind of works both ways. It gives you an idea of if our guys can do it and if they're going to be the guys that we want to have here in the future, or if they can't do it, we're going to let them go. So I think I liked the play calling much better. I did like how DeAndre Swift ran better. I'm not getting into Khalil Herbert. I'll just get mad because I do agree you got to give him some touches. DeAndre
I don't see that happening at this point. I feel like we've already seen.
I'm not sure that we will either. I'm not sure that we will either.
Out of the offense entirely.
I don't think we will either now. And to me, it's DeAndre Swift isn't going to do this every week. He had a great week. I don't foresee that being the case every week. I don't know. It's wild to me.
I just feel like with what we've seen now and the fact that Roschon is healthy, that he's the change of pace guy now. He's the guy that, if not the starter, I just feel like he's that guy now for them. That's the thunder to the lightning of DeAndre Swift. And obviously they don't see Herbert that way anymore. He hasn't gotten any touches. I think he had 6 snaps each in the first couple games. He didn't have a ton in the third game, and he didn't play at all this week. So
I'm not sure it's they. I don't know if it's Waldron or Chad Morton or both, but somebody doesn't like him. Which is crazy because he is playing on special teams. He's on every special team snap. But he's just not.
That's probably the only reason he's still on the roster.
You're right. He's not getting
the there's an injury,
And what's crazy is I can imagine that there's probably a handful of teams that would take him in a heartbeat right now that are having bad running back situations and would love to have a guy like Khalil Herbert. But it is what it is. I'm not going to get into that because I'll just get mad. So I'm not even going to get into that. Yeah, I agree with you. I thought the play calling in general was better, and it wasn't so much the play calling as it was the personnel. And this is what we've talked about for a while. Sometimes you just got to have the right personnel out there. There were a few times still where we saw DeAndre Carter out there on a block that he probably shouldn't have been on, but for the most part, it's been better. It was better, I should say, in that game. So let's hope that
it's like I almost feel like it's like Shane Waldron is listening to like these podcasts and and reading some of these articles that are being written and seeing what the media is saying, because he's doing things that we're all complaining about. Like we're all talking about, why is DeAndre Carter blocking in the screen game and things of that nature. We didn't really see a ton of that kind of stuff in this past game. And every time you hear somebody making a complaint about something, like for instance, the first week of the season, everybody's complaining, why is Cole Kmet not getting enough snaps? Well, guess what's happened the last 3 weeks? More snaps, more snaps, more snaps.
Well, here's the big problem. Here's where I find a difference. You can't tell me that these other coaches in the past, these other offensive coaches we've had, haven't seen these things on tape that we talk about every week. We're not football experts and we can see these things. You can't tell me that they don't notice them. The difference is the Luke Getzes, the Matt Nagy's, instead of saying, okay, I shouldn't have left them out there in that situation, we're going to change that. They looked at it and said, well, the players just didn't execute here. They need to execute. Yeah. How many times did all we ever heard out of Luke Getzes' mouth was, oh, we just got to execute the play. No. How about you change the play because you suck at calling it? It's not always the players. Sometimes it is the scheme and the personnel. And yeah, it might be the player, but maybe it's because you don't have the right player in the right situation. Not everybody can adapt to everything. It's not, you have to play the player's strengths, even though you want guys that are multifaceted. That's the end goal. But let's face reality. You're limited in roster spots. You're limited in money. You have to just sometimes play to some of these guys' strengths. That's how you do it. The defense is doing it. You got to do it on the offense.
And that's a good point. I mean, I don't think it's any secret to any of us who've watched the Bears over the past several years that we've obviously had stubborn offensive coordinators and offensive minds who like to do things their way. And they'll like you said, they'll say things like, we got to execute better, or like we like the look here, or whatever the case may be. And there are still some plays on tape with Waldron even where you're like, well, why are we doing this? Like, for instance, you guys watch a lot. I watch a lot of these quarterback breakdowns that these former NFL quarterbacks do, like Kurt Warner, Tim Jenkins, JT O'Sullivan, Chase Daniel. These guys all do really good breakdowns. And I can't remember which one it was I was watching. It could have been more than one of these breakdowns that they were talking about this. But there was this particular screenplay in the last game where, and I believe Caleb actually checked into the play, where Kmet is on the inside in the slot, and he kind of drifts out for a flat screen, right? And it's like a bubble screen where these other receivers are supposed to be blocking for him. I think DJ Moore was one of them out there, and the other one, I believe, was Rome. And they didn't block it particularly well. And Kmet didn't. I mean, he almost got a first down just because he's so strong and so powerful. But whoever it was I was watching do the breakdown was saying, "This is what I don't understand. I don't dislike this play call. I don't dislike this look. But why is Kmet the guy who's in the slot there? Why is Kmet the guy on the inside who's taking that screen pass? And why are we blocking with, I think it was Jenkins. And why are we blocking with Rome and DJ? Why isn't DJ the guy on the inside there who's catching that ball, who's very good at breaking tackles, who's very elusive? And Kmet is such a good blocker. Why do we not have that? Why do we not have that as the design there? Why is that not the check play there instead of whatever it was what they checked into there with Kmet running that play, Kmet getting the ball there? And I tend to agree with that. Look, I like Cole Kmet. I think Cole Kmet has vastly improved. I think his speed on tape, and I've told you guys this multiple times in the past few weeks, it's much improved. He looks very, very good with the way he's played this year. But that being said, you guys tell me, who's the better option with the ball in her hands to pick up 10 yards on a screen pass? Is it DJ Moore or is it Cole Kmet? I mean, come on. To me, that's pretty obvious. So why are we doing it like this? And it's not every play. There's a lot of stuff that I like that I'm seeing Waldron do, but there are plays every game where you see him doing stuff like that. And it's like, why? Why are we doing this? So I get it. I mean, every week we're hopefully going to continue to see improvement. I like how it's on an upward trajectory now and how we don't have as much to complain about as we have in the past few weeks. But his offense is still nowhere near where they need to be. I mean, not even close. So I want to continue to see improvement, gradual improvement. And as somebody mentioned before we get into breaking down the Panthers, somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that the Carolina game feels like a must win. And I tend to advise Joe here. He wants to know if Carolina is a must-win game. I think it is, because if you lose to Carolina, now you're below 500 again. You're at 2-3. Your schedule is only going to start getting more difficult down the line. You've got all your division games to play still that you haven't played yet. Yes, you're going to improve as the season goes along. But again, this schedule is only getting tougher, and you're only going to play better teams as it goes along here. So,
and it's an NFC
Carolina,
opponent.
This is an opportunity to win a game against a team that on paper, your roster is far superior to, in my opinion. Yes, they made a quarterback change, and they've played better since then with Andy Dalton under center because he's obviously got a lot of experience. But Andy Dalton is not a starter in this league anymore for a reason. He took over for Bryce Young because he played terribly. And they felt like that was the best move for his development. Now, you can make – a lot of people have opinions on this as to whether they're just done with Young or if they want to just, give him an opportunity to develop under another quarterback. But the point of the fact of the matter is that Andy Dalton is not a long-term solution as a quarterback. And again, he's not a starter anymore in this league for a reason. There's a reason that other teams have not signed him to be their guy. He's been a backup everywhere he's been for a long time. So, after he left Cincinnati and then the 1 year in Chicago where he got hurt, and he was supposed to be the guy in front of Fields. So, and don't even get me started on that disaster that they had going on with Justin his rookie year. But in any case, yes, Vizo Joe, I think Carolina is a must-win game because if you overlook this team, which I think a lot of teams would go into this game and overlook it. I think Carolina just won 2 weeks ago, and I can't remember who it was they played now, but that's a situation where I think that team was overlooking Carolina. They're like, look, this is the worst team in the league. They're not very good. We should have an easy win here. And then they got beat. So I'm looking at it like this is the NFL. Everybody is good here. Even the bad teams. They're better than anyone else in any other league. So you can't walk into this and just expect to win. They have got to go out there and play. They got to play well. And they need to win the game, in my opinion. Yes, it's a must win. So And as Aldo makes a point here, because the Panthers are without their two starting linebackers, do you think the Bears will get their highest rushing total for the season? I think they could, and I think they should. If they build on what they did last week, I think there's a very good chance of that. Yeah. I would say that one of the matchups that I'm looking forward to this week, and I'll move this over to you in a second here, Tim, but is our defensive line versus their offensive line. I believe it was I can't remember if it was Eric Washington or if it was Matt Eberflus in their press conference the other day alluded to the fact that this offensive line for the Panthers is probably their strongest unit. They're probably the strength of their team. Yeah, I think it was Washington. It's the strength of their team. And it does pose, I don't want to necessarily say it poses a problem, but they have played better in the past couple weeks to the point where, as well as the Bears' defensive line has played, it's a matchup worth watching out for because the Bears are going to have to get pressure, especially in Andy Dalton. He's a guy who can, if you give him time, don't be surprised if he makes some throws. But if you pressure him and you don't give him a ton of time to make throws, he's the kind of guy who's not afraid to sling it around there and throw some interceptions. So, and here's another thing that I wanted to mention to you guys too is Eric Washington, in my opinion, his fingerprints are all over that defensive line. When we came into the season, we talked about, and I think I've mentioned this even last week too, how our concerns for this team going into the season were the offensive and defensive lines. And in particular with the defensive line was, can they get enough pressure? Can they get enough pressure with their front four to keep offenses off balance, to force them to make quick decisions, to give your back end opportunities to make plays on the football? And so far they have. I was reading a stat on Twitter earlier, and I can't remember who posted it now, but the Bears have the second highest pass rush win rate in the entire league, which is huge. Because if you would have told me that before the season started that the Bears were going to have the second most success in pass rush win rate, I don't know that I would have believed you. But the Darrell Taylor trade has been huge for them. Montez Sweat has not quite had the same impact he had last year, but he's got a sack. He's played well. He's doing what he's brought in to do. Jervon Dexter has taken a leap. He's got 3 sacks now. He had another good game last week. So you're talking about a defensive line who's doing what it was doing more than what we expected him to. Even Andrew Billings is just getting better and better in this defense. And the way he's played, the guy's never been known as a pass rusher, but here he is getting pressure left and right in every single game, getting dent in pocket. You're getting pressure in the pocket, denting the pocket. So I really like how the defense has shown up. And again, where I'm going to be paying attention to this game, one of the big areas I'm going to be paying attention to is how this defensive line performs against Carolina's offensive line. Because if they can continue to be as disruptive as they have, this game, it could get ugly quickly if the Bears play up to their potential, which I'm not sure that they will. So we'll have to wait and see. But I will be paying a lot of attention to that matchup. Go ahead, Tim. I
was going to say, I agree with you with it being a must win. And from all the things that you said with it, the schedule's getting tougher. It's an NFC opponent, which is only going to hurt your chances of making the playoffs if you have a, record that's close and you're in a wild card spot. But I think the biggest thing is that after the trade that they've made, I know last year they played, so that was kind of the one they won that one, so that kind of got that out of the way. But I don't think you can lose this game for that reason alone, with Bryce Young being the quarterback. As long as they have Bryce Young, I don't know that the Bears can afford to lose to Carolina. Now, and that could change over the years, but while it's still fresh on everyone's minds, it's just another thing saying, yep, duped you. I duped you. And I almost feel like that is enough fire, if you will, for them to win that game. And I think if they don't win, it's kind of it gives you a sour taste, I guess you could say. It's not that it's, you're going to lose to teams in the NFL. It's part of it, but this team has been straight garbage for the better part of 2 years now. And yeah, they got a win and they've been a little bit better with Andy Dalton, but guys, their team, it's still not a good team. It's just not. The Panthers are not a good team. They're not a very good roster. The one thing I will say is, and Eric Washington mentioned it about that offensive line, that was a strength of theirs 2 years ago before they drafted Bryce Young, and that's why they felt good about Bryce Young. And then last year, it was bad. It was just bad. Now, could part of that been Bryce Young? Sure. I think a lot of times the quarterback does have to do with how good the offensive line looks. That is part of it. So maybe this offensive line wasn't that bad last year, but Bryce Young just didn't help him any. And, he was a rookie, so you can't put it all on him. But as far as the offensive line goes now, they have looked good, especially in the run game. Chuba Hubbard's having a really good year. So to me, that does go with that. This is a part of that, I think. And regardless of how you look at it, it's going to be there for at least the next however many times they play. Next few times, in my opinion. But the confusing part is, and I want to get into this just for a second with the Andy Dalton and Bryce Young thing. My first initial thought was, man, you can't give up on the kid so early. You just got him, he's had a season and a couple of games. And I know it's a new coach and he wants to find out if he's the guy, but here's the problem with this. If you're going to sit him now, you should have sat him to start. You can't play him and then sit him. The one thing that I will say about it is maybe they want to see how Bryce Young responds
to adversity.
Exactly. How is he going to respond to this adversity? Maybe it's he's been given everything since high school. He's always been the guy. He was the best player in high school. He's the best player at Alabama. He was the best player in college football. He was the number one quarterback out of the draft. Maybe this kid needs to realize you really ain't that great, pal. You got a long way to go in this league. So maybe it is a thing to see how he responds to the adversity. But it could also possibly be, I do want this kid to sit because I do want to see him develop. I want to give him the opportunity to develop, and we're just not giving him that opportunity right now with how bad the roster is. So let's let Andy go out there. He's a veteran. He's going to make better decisions. He's smarter. And if he gets his head ripped off in the process, then so be it. He's not the future of the team. Maybe they still believe Bryce Young is. And Dave Canales is a great coach. He's a great offensive coordinator, and he's proven that he's good with quarterbacks. He completely revitalized Baker Mayfield's career. So, maybe we'll see. But, it's all at this point, like I said, it remains to be seen. And I will say this. I think that Andy Dalton is going to make it. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk game, but I do think they're still not a very good team, and we are a much better team. We just need to play like it. And, Andy Dalton's probably going to have a little bit of bones for this game, but, I don't know. And maybe DJ Moore will still have some bones, even though he said earlier in the week that he already got those out of the way last year against Carolina, but maybe he still will. We'll see. I mean, it's still your old team. So, but again, I think this is a game we should win. I think we still will win it. But I'm also going to say that I would pump the brakes a little bit. I think they're going to give us a better game than what we originally thought early on, especially with Andy Dalton starting. And Chuba Hubbard is a good running back. And we've struggled against the run game a little bit lately. So
I think, yeah, Chuba has played pretty well. I just feel like here's kind of my thoughts on this. The Panthers, I feel like the moves that they've made, like with bringing Dalton in and with the way the offensive line is played, I think that they could keep this a game if the Bears don't play as well as they could or should. That being said, the Bears, in my opinion, are very capable of blowing this team out if they play to the best of their ability, which they haven't to this point. Let's be honest. They have not. So I'm not expecting them to. However, I will say with this week against Carolina and then next week they go to London to play the Jags, you have an opportunity to put your team at 4-2 going into the bye week. To me, must win games, both of them. I think you got
incredibly winnable games too.
That's
incredibly
my point.
Winnable games
Because they're so winnable. And you got the bye week coming up to kind of rest and rejuvenate and plan for the rest of the season. I think you have to win those games because, again, the tough sledding comes later on. Minnesota is much better than I thought they were going to be. I mean, way better than I thought they were going to be. Detroit is very, very good. Green Bay is very, very good. You've got some divisional games coming up that you haven't played any of yet. It's only going to get tougher going down the road here. So, in my opinion, they are absolutely both these next two games are must-win games because if you lose one or both of them, you can pretty much kiss the playoffs goodbye. If you lose one of them and you're 3-3, that hope is not dead. But again, you're going into the toughest part of your schedule. So I think you get 2 wins here. You feel great going in your bye week. You have a chance to prepare for the rest of your season and possibly make a playoff push. If you're at 4-2, you're sitting pretty at the bye week. So I want to see them win both, especially with the way Jacksonville has played this season. They have looked awful, and I mean awful. Yeah. That Trevor Lawrence contract looks worse and worse every single day. Every day it looks worse. And I just, I wasn't a big fan of that contract in the first place. As you guys know, I think Trevor Lawrence is an okay player. I don't think he's anywhere near worth that contract they gave him. He's
a Daniel Jones. He's another Daniel Jones.
He's had one good season, and he's been ever since then. He's been rewarded for it. He was supposed to turn the franchise around, and they haven't won a game. So the way I look at it is like I said, you got to win both of these games. You got to take advantage of the opportunity here. You have 2 teams, one of which is reeling, and the other one is playing a little bit better. But there's no reason you can't beat Carolina, and you should beat Carolina. So I want to see them come out of these next 2 weeks looking good, improving, showing that they're not going to. Take it easy is not the right phrasing I want to use here, but don't look past these teams just because on paper you look better than them. You should beat them. You need to come out and play like you're in the Super Bowl, like this is the best team you're going to see all season long. It should be that way every single week. Foot on the gas. And I want to see that this week and next week in London because obviously that's a tough situation, to fly halfway across the world, halfway across the planet and play a team in a totally different area and a different area of the world. And, you don't have as much practice time to do it. So,
and Jacksonville's very comfortable playing in London. They've done
it lots of times. So that's the one concern I have for that game is that the Bears, they haven't traveled a ton internationally and they haven't exactly, I don't think they've ever played Jacksonville in London yet to this point. So, I am interested to see how that is because, like you said, Tim, Jacksonville is used to doing this. They're used to playing in London. So, again, to me, there's no reason the Bears should not win that game, and I expect them to win that game. If they lose, I won't be totally surprised, just because, again, it's a difficult spot for a team to go across the pond like that and play to the best of their ability with less practice time and jet lag and all that. Okay. But I still think they should get it done and need to, especially going into the bye week. Because again, 4-2 looks a hell of a lot better than 2-4 or 3-3. So that's what I want to see. Bruja says the Colts game should have been less. I totally agree with you on that one. That's a game they had no business losing. And the fact that they lost that game, to me, you should be looking back at that game throughout the season and saying, we look past that team, that shit ain't going to happen again. I'm not doing that again with anybody else this season. We're going to come out every week, and every opponent we play, we're going to act like that's the best team we've seen, and we're going to give it every damn thing we've got. And that's the way it should be. It should be that way every week with every team. But it's not, unfortunately. So, but I do want to see the Bears show that. I want to, again, I don't want to see them looking past Carolina. I don't want to see them looking past Jacksonville. I want to see them show what they can do. And Vizo makes a good point here that the next 5 opponents have given up over 100 QBR to opposing quarterbacks. I saw a similar stat to that myself. This is a good opportunity for the Bears passing game to get into rhythm too, and the run game for that matter. So Derek Brown, I think his name is Derek Brown. I could be blanking on his last name for some reason, but I'm pretty sure his name's Derek Brown. Defensive lineman for Carolina got hurt early in the season. He's out for the year, and he's a fantastic player. Fantastic player. One of the better defensive linemen in the league, interior defensive linemen in the league. He's not playing. This is an opportunity.
Brian Burns in the offseason.
Brian, they traded Brian Burns too. So this defensive line is not what it has been in the past. It's an opportunity for the run game to get going and for the offensive line to show that they can actually play ball. They looked better last week. They still have some serious issues. This offensive line is a weak point on this team, and it scares me a little bit. But they did play better last week than they have, especially in run game. They blocked a hell of a lot better. But they're still struggling with like the simplest shit, like so many stunts and things and games that they're just struggling so much to pick these things up and work well as a cohesive unit. And I really want to see them get better with this because it's very concerning to me. But I think they have an opportunity to right the ship this week. And as I just made a point earlier, and Aldo puts on the screen, is the Panthers placed defensive tackle Derek Brown. I was right. That was actually his last name. On injured reserve Tuesday after he suffered a knee injury in the opener. So apparently they hadn't decided to put him on injured reserve until recently. But I did know he got hurt earlier in the year. But for whatever reason, I thought that they had already made that decision to put him on IR, and he was out for the year. But look, I mean, he's out for this game. So that's all that really matters to us as Bear fans, okay? So let's see them establish the run game. Let's see them protect Caleb up front and see what he can do. Because he's shown what's crazy to me is even with all the pressure that he has seen, he has looked awfully comfortable in the pocket, in my opinion. I feel like the way he stands in there and he's willing to both take hits, he's willing to step up in the pocket. He's not so quick to escape, which was one of the big criticisms Justin used to get when he was in Chicago, is escaping the pocket too early. Caleb will stand back there and he'll try to deliver. And he takes some sacks doing that, which that's not good. But at the same time, you don't see fear in his eyes about the guys that are around him, about the bodies that are around him. He's looking to deliver. And I want to see them protect a little bit better to give him an opportunity to do that, even though, you don't want him holding on to the ball for too long. But he has gotten the ball out pretty quickly for the most part. So, opportunity here. The defensive line for them is not as good as it has been. Their offensive line is better than it has been, in my opinion. So I want to see our defensive line continue to build upon what they have done, continue to rush the passer at the rate that they have. I want to see them tighten up a little bit more in the run game because, like you said earlier, Tim, it has not been as good as it has in the past couple years to this point in the season. There have been times where they look great in run defense, and then there's other times where they get gashed for huge runs, like the game against Indianapolis where Jonathan Taylor had the huge run for a touchdown. So I want to see them stay tight defensively, tighten up just a little bit more in the run game. And then again, on the other side of the ball, offensively, I want to see the offensive line impose more of their will in this game against their defensive line because I think they can and should. So that's kind of what I'm looking to see in this game. Is there anything more in particular, Tim, that you're excited for, that you've got your eyes on before we get into these last few questions here?
I just was going to say we're seeing steady improvement out of Caleb every game. We're seeing a little bit here and there. And I thought he made a pretty big jump between game 3 and we're already on game 4, right? My gosh.
This is game 5 coming up here.
Game 5, right. So I was going to say between game 3 and game 4, I thought was quite a bit of improvement. So maybe we'll see even more here. I liked how he was able to get to his check down when he didn't see. Now, I thought a few times he went too quickly to his check down, but recognizing that is good. That means he's seeing it and he knows to get it there, even though there may have been some big open looks downfield. I like that he was looking for that check down too. And he was actually, take the positive play because you will start seeing it. take the positive play. So, but I know we got some questions. So, Aldo, if you can throw up that first question, that one you had about Jaden Daniels. Here it is.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So let me start this.
Let me start it, and then you can rebuttal here real quick, Jeff.
Okay,
because this is interesting to me because a lot of people are talking about this Cliff Kingsbury thing, and I personally,
we'll read off the question first.
I'm sorry. Do you think Caleb Williams would be further ahead of Cliff Kingsbury if the OC or if he was the OC instead of Shane Waldron? And no, I don't. I don't think Jaden Daniels is further ahead of Caleb Williams right now. I think what they've done with this is you're handcuffing Jaden Daniels to the way he played in college, and you're handcuffing Washington to the way that Jaden Daniels played in college. Yeah, it looks good now, but are you really helping him? He's not having to learn the NFL offense. He's not having to learn how to play an NFL style quite the same as Caleb Williams. They've thrown everything at Caleb Williams. Everything. And we're seeing development. Are we seeing Jaden Daniels develop, or are we just seeing Jaden Daniels play well like he has played? Does that make sense? In my opinion, I think honestly, in my opinion, I'm not upset that we didn't hire Cliff Kingsbury. Because, yeah, Kyler Murray, he did a great job getting Kyler Murray up to speed in the NFL. But is Kyler Murray ever going to be an elite quarterback in this league? I don't think so. I think we've seen his ceiling or around his ceiling now, and it's good. It's NFL good, but is it, multiple Super Bowl winning? Are you going to win games because of Kyler Murray? In my opinion, I don't think they made a mistake. I think Waldron maybe of the two, he was the better hire for Caleb Williams. Just my opinion.
Well, let me just say this. So first of all, I tend to agree with most of what you just said. I think the question is whether Caleb would be further ahead if Cliff Kingsbury was the offensive coordinator instead of Shane Waldron. And I agree with what you said. I don't think Jaden Daniels is necessarily further ahead than Caleb is. I think the things that they're both allowing Caleb to do and asking Caleb to do is night and day compared to what Jaden Daniels is doing.
Absolutely.
They're keeping it simple for him over there. They're having him do things that he is comfortable with doing. And look, if Cliff Kingsbury was in Chicago right now, I feel like they'd be doing a lot of the same things that Caleb was doing at USC, trying to keep him comfortable, trying not to expose him to too much. And I don't know if it's because I don't know if it's necessary with Kingsbury. I don't know if it's because that's the way he likes to do things. Because as we've seen, he's not a prototype NFL offensive mind. Okay, he does things differently than most offensive minds in the NFL do. So I don't know if that's just the way he likes to do things, or if it's because he does feel like that's better for that quarterback at that particular time. But again, in my opinion, what they're asking Caleb to do, I think, is better for his future. I think they're training him and working with him to get to the point where he is light years ahead of where most rookie quarterbacks are. And in my opinion, he's doing way more than most rookies do right now. The fact that they're allowing him to do things at the line of scrimmage, like change protections, change plays, check in and out of stuff. Even someone like JT O'Sullivan has mentioned on his quarterback channel that he's making hand signals to some of the receivers to run different routes. And I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but if he is doing that, which it seems like he is, again, that's another thing that they're allowing him to do that most coordinators are not going to allow rookies to do. So I look, again, like I said, I think if he was there, if Kingsbury was in Chicago, they probably would be doing things more like what Jaden is doing right now, keeping it more simplified and not asking him to do as much. But I prefer what they're doing here in Chicago with Waldron and allowing him to do more and learn more. That being said, I think you can still make the case at this point in time that maybe there was a better coordinator candidate out there. That remains to be seen. I like Shane Waldron. I think there's some other guys who are doing a very good job as well that were candidates for the Bears, such as Zach Robinson was a candidate for the Bears. Who's the guy in New Orleans right now with the Saints? Clint Kubiak he was another guy who was in the running for the Bears. He's done a good job. So there's certainly an argument to be made there, but I like the fact that Shane Waldron is allowing Caleb to do what he's allowing him to do and letting him play NFL quarterback. And I think it's only going to benefit him. Okay. So that's just my opinion on it. I don't think they made the wrong move choosing Waldron over Kingsbury. I think if you're going to make an argument about whether the right guy was hired, I don't think it's whether Kingsbury was the right guy. I think it's maybe one of these other guys. But I will say Jaden Daniels has been very, very impressive with what he's done so far. Okay, so I do like, and Viso Joe mentions Liam Cohen from the Bucs. He was another guy that interviewed for the Bears. Yes. So he's another guy who's done a pretty good job too. But yeah, I tend to agree. Like you said, Tim, I think this is better for Caleb in the long run.
Well, and I would point this out too. And I don't have the stats for this, and I could be totally wrong, but I haven't seen Jaden Daniels line up under center at all, really. I'm sure it's happened a few times, but it's pretty much been strictly gun. And we saw a lot of that early with Caleb Williams too, but we saw a lot of under center this last game. A lot more.
I'd still like to see them run more under center.
I agree. I would too. But here's the thing. You can't run those plays like you did with 23 personnel, like you did with Doug Kramer. You can't do that if you can't play under center. These are things in the NFL that you have to be able to do. And this goes right along with what we're talking about. They're allowing Caleb Williams to do these things. And yeah, is it going to be great off the bat? No. But you're going to see it, and he's able to do it. Now he's only getting better. And it's one of those things where, is Jaden Daniels going to be able to do that soon or not? And is it something that is he ever going to figure it out if you don't actually get him doing it soon? Just my opinion.
Yeah. And Cliff's got a question here. Before I answer your question real quick, Cliff, Foster made a really good point here too, that Caleb is learning pretty quickly. He might add how to be a quarterback in the pocket. And that kind of goes in conjunction with what I just said. He's learning quickly. You can see it on the film, in my opinion, that he's learning fast and he is becoming more acclimated. He's playing like a pocket quarterback, more so than a guy who sees the pressure and he's got to bail. He's standing in the pocket and trying to deliver. And really he looks more like he looks to me like he plays less hero ball than what a lot of people thought he might do. Now there is still some of that in his game, but I feel like he has progressed really well as far as playing in structure. So moving on to Cliff's question here. He wants to see what Kramer can do. He's talking about Doug Kramer as a fullback. Can he catch? Can he run with the ball? Let's find out. And he's really talking about this in relation to what we were mentioning earlier with Doug Kramer being in at fullback on that play at the 1 yard line. And then again, later in the game where they needed that short yardage situation. In my opinion, Cliff, there's a lot of offensive minds out there, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very bright-minded guys, and they do things in a different kind of way. A lot of times, a lot of these coordinators. So I anticipate if Waldron can be as creative as we want to see him be, why not? Why not get Kramer involved a little bit? If he's athletic enough, which he's shown he can move. So maybe we try to get the ball there. Maybe we try to. Yeah, maybe we try to get him the ball. Maybe we try to run it with him. Maybe we try to throw him a little pass, make it look like, maybe it's a little play action where it looks like you're going to run behind him and then he kind of just slips out, and catches a pass.
Throw it.
Why not? Something like that would be cool. I mean, it just depends. I don't know if Kramer's capable of it, but the guy looks athletic enough, so why not? I'd like to see that.
We need
couple more questions here. Yeah, the mini fridge.
The mini fridge.
A couple more questions here. So this is an interesting one from Foster here. If we lose, he's talking about the next two games. If we lose both and we don't recover, is the staff gone? I think that's the key point. Is your middle statement there, Cliff or Foster? Is no recovery. If the Bears do not recover this season, I think that's a likelihood. If they lose both games and they cannot recover from it, and to me, it would have to be bad. They would really have to fall off and play very poorly to finish the season off for the staff to be gone. That being said, I think if they finish even like 7 and not 7 and 10, but even if they finish like 8 and 9, maybe even 7 and 10, I just don't see them letting the staff go yet. You just brought in a rookie quarterback. Do you really want to go through the same thing you've gone through the last several cycles where it's like you get 1 year with the rookie and then they move on to a different staff who may or may not even want the guy? So I don't know that would be the case with most coordinators working with Caleb, as opposed to some of the other quarterbacks the Bears have had in the past. But still, it's tough for me to look at this and say, if they don't totally fall off flat, like really look absolutely terrible, I don't see a world where they're getting fired, especially Matt Eberflus, because he was hired by Poles. Poles believes in him and what he does and what the defense has done too, for that matter. So again, if they didn't totally fall completely out, then maybe, or totally off the wagon, I should say, if they were just terrible, then maybe, but I don't see it. What do you think, Tim?
Well, I would say, I don't think there's any question that the Bears front office and ownership can see that we clearly have the worst head coach in the division. And that's not saying that he's a bad coach, but look, Kevin O'Connell has done incredible this year with what he's got. He has made Sam Darnold look like an MVP. Right now, he probably is the MVP. That's how good he's played. And obviously, Dan Campbell has done a great job in Detroit. And oh my gosh, I'm slipping on his name now, in Green Bay. Matt LaFleur has done an excellent job in Green Bay. So, yeah, I mean, let's face reality. Eberflus is probably the worst coach of the bunch. But to go along with what you said, Jeff, he had, there would have to be, in my opinion, an absolute disaster of a season where this thing just falls. And right now, it's looking like it's not going to be that. Like, the team is growing and they're getting better every week. The quarterback play is getting better every week. And we're starting to see, the defense and the special teams are really freaking good. And we knew they were going to be good going in. So as long as they would carry this thing, as long as the offense is able to just get better each week. And in my opinion, I think they're going to start beating teams that they probably shouldn't beat because this is the direction that it's going. I really don't see an avenue where Matt Eberflus gets fired. Do I think that he is necessarily the right coach? No, not necessarily. But I don't think he's been so bad that you walk away, especially with having the rookie quarterback. Like Jeff said, you don't want to do this whole charade again. You know, this is the coach you had. This is the quarterback you brought in for him to coach. So you dug your grave. Here we go. You roll with it now. So just my opinion. I think we have one more.
Next year's next year's the key, guys. If they play well this year, even if they don't play as well and they retain the staff, okay, going into next year now, if they don't play well next year with this same staff, they're gone. It doesn't matter how. If they're 7-10, 8-9, they're totally gone next year.
I think it's playoffs season. Or bust. Period. Next year,
they probably need to make the playoffs next year if they want to stay. Like I said, this year, regardless
maybe
of what
win a playoff game.
I think they make it. But if they would have to really fall off this year to lose their jobs. But next year is the key for me. So I think this is the last question here. There might be two more. Here we go. Vizo wants to know, why have the Bears defense struggled against the run? Why has the Bears defense struggled against the run? And I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. I think for the most part, they've looked pretty good. I just think there's a couple issues here with, as we've heard Eberflus talk about in the past and some other people. I think Brian Baldinger touched on this a little bit when he was on CHGO. It's just a matter of the Bears not always run fitting to the best of their ability. Guys not always being in their gap. And for the most part, that's not an issue. For the most part, they're very good about that. And they've done a pretty good job stopping the run for the most part. But it's the big gash runs that have hurt them. Again, the one in Indy with Jonathan Taylor, that one was painful. There was a big one in the first week with Tyjae Spears, broke off a big run. So to me, it's just a matter of they just have to fit those runs a little bit better, make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. And because they've got enough pursuit from these guys on the back end where they can tackle. And we've seen the front four is getting pushed. So I think, to me, that's where it is. I just think there's a couple miscues with the run fits, guys not being in the right spot. Or, the Jonathan Taylor run in particular, he just kind of got behind a couple guys and they got caught up and then he ran around them. So that's just a dynamic player making a dynamic play, in my opinion. But again, just making sure we're in the right spot. Cliff says more consistency. In essence, that's what it is. Just be more consistent about what you're doing.
I think some of it is Andrew Billings is getting double teamed a lot more often than we saw last year. I think teams finally picked up on he's really freaking good against the run. So he's kind of been double teamed in the run game. And I think, I don't want to say this too early because I don't think it's necessarily the case, but TJ Edwards has maybe taken a little bit of a step off of where he was last year. He was just so good last year.
And I still think he's playing pretty damn well.
He is playing very well. I just think it's early and we're not seeing him play to his top, the top of his game right now necessarily. And Tremaine Edmonds a little bit of the same, even though Tremaine Edmonds has looked really good so far this year too. I think our linebackers we're just so good to them, or we're so used to them being that dominant that, we make a few mistakes here and there and give up some big runs, and we almost forget how good they are and that they are flawed. They're players. They're going to make mistakes. So, but I think that there's a couple things and those two things definitely play into that a little bit. But I do see that getting better. It's going to improve. And the defensive line, the pass rush has been light years ahead of where it was last year. So I think that's, and Cliff makes a good point here. Maybe play Sanborn more of those run situations, but I don't know. I think Kyler Gordon's been really good against the run. So I don't know if you necessarily have to do that because, like I said, Kyler Gordon's been really good there too.
As others have said before in the past, though, when Sanborn's on the field, good things
Yes.
tend to happen for whatever reason. And I feel like they have a good mix of when they've got him on the field or not. I mean, you got to remember, if it's an obvious rundown, there's a lot of times where he'll be in their base defense. But, so many teams play sub so much in these nickel packages because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. And Kyler Gordon is the guy you want defending the pass over Jack Sanborn. So, and he can stop the run pretty damn well too. That's why he's the nickel. So, and Aldo makes a good point here before we get out of here that after 4 games last season, this is an interesting stat. After 4 games last season, the Bears were 18th against the run. This year, they're right at this point, they're 18th against the run. And last year they finished number 1, best overall. So I kind of expect that to be the case here too. That I think they're just going to continue to get better and better. And again, it's early in the season. They've only played 4 games. So I feel like everybody's kind of still getting used to the situation and getting more acclimated to playing football again at full speed. So I think that it's only going to get better. It's only going to continue to improve. And in my opinion, this defensive staff is very, very good about coaching the fundamentals and coaching how they want things done. And they have success doing it because it's a scheme that works. We've seen it. So I think it'll get better. I only think they're going to improve. And I still think they're going to finish the year as one of the better run defenses in the entire league. So before we get out of here, guys, a great show tonight. We appreciate you guys as always. There was a lot of good chatter here in the comment section. You guys were saying some stuff in here that was cracking me up at one point in time. So I got a good laugh about that. But also, as always, you guys have such good opinions and such good conversation starters, different things you guys see about the game that we love to bring on the show and talk about. So we appreciate that as always. And again, before we get out of here, just a quick reminder, guys, to please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're at Barroom Network, either here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from, whether it be Apple, Spotify, or wherever. You can find us all on Twitter. Again, Aldo is at Barroom Network. He's our executive producer, and he is the man, guys. He's doing such good work here on this channel with all the other shows that we have here. So let's just thank Aldo for everything he does and being such a great producer for us and for everybody else on this channel. So thanks to Aldo. And again, you can follow us also, me and Tim. I'm at _Jeff Willis, and you can follow Tim at Tim Willis 24. And as Aldo says, I quote, "I'm a badass." So let's all just to be a super appreciative of Aldo and all he does. And
yes.
And if you guys haven't checked out any of the other shows on this channel, I encourage you to do so. There's a lot of great shows on here that we have with whether it be White Sox shows or Blackhawks shows, or Greg, our resident scout, has his own show. So there's just a lot of good content on here for you guys to check out. So again, before we get out of here, just a quick reminder to like the video, subscribe, all those things, guys, and check us out every week on Friday nights. We love you guys, and we appreciate you being here as always. And until next week, let's bear down.
Got Bears.
The Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.
Ha ha ha!